Hello, everybody. This week in Westminster, the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill, which is here on the Parliament's website, introduced by Kim Leadbeater a few months ago, comes back to Westminster to go before the House of Commons again for its third reading. Now, this has been in committee stage for a couple of months, and there's been lots of discussion about this bill, both in the committee in Parliament and in the wider media and social media places where people talk and discuss things in the UK. Now, this particular bill going through Westminster just applies to England and Wales. And it passed the second reading by 325 votes to 275. And some of those MPs that voted for it are now reconsidering. We only need 26 of those MPs to change their minds, and then this bill falls and it will not become law in England and Wales. And of course, the Heritage Party is the only UK-wide party that opposes euthanasia as a matter of principle and party policy. You don't get that from Labour, the Tories, the Lib Dems, the Greens, Reform. MPs from those parties vote in either way. Some of them support it, some of them don't. I hope that many of them will look at the discussion that's been happening in the committee stage and will vote against it this Friday, because I'm making it this video just a few days before it goes back to the third reading in the House of Commons on Friday, the 16th of May. Big concerns that people have about this bill, apart from the obvious that it's wrong for the state to allow people to kill each other, is that the so-called safeguards that it was going to put in place, that were promised, are not actually going to be very good at safeguarding vulnerable people from being killed by their doctor. First of all, it was supposed to only be allowed if a high court judge gave permission for someone to undergo euthanasia. But that's been watered down to a panel of non-medical experts, maybe one magistrate, maybe a couple of people who are vaguely connected to the NHS will be able to make a decision. And no one who is a relative of the said person will be allowed to appeal that decision if that panel of non-experts decides to grant a request for euthanasia. It's not just going to be terminally ill adults. It's going to be non-terminally ill adults. They actually discussed in the committee stage allowing people who have mental illnesses like anorexia to undergo euthanasia, and children between 16 and 18, 16 and 17-year-olds to undergo euthanasia as well, which clearly is abhorrent. You know, not that the euthanasia isn't, but to say this kind of mission creep of the bill is already being accepted and already being talked about and propagandized doesn't bode well for a lot of people who really are not in the initial remit of what we were told the bill is about anyway. It's going to be the same as what happened with the abortion bill that came in 1967. It was sold to people on the basis that there would be 200 or 300 a year in extreme circumstances where there was extreme suffering. And a lot of people who are compassionate, and they said, okay, but then we don't have 200 or 300. We have 200,000 or 300,000 abortions a year in the UK now, 58 years on from the abortion bill. It's being used essentially as a method of birth control. And over that time, 11 million unborn children have lost their lives to abortion. I could use stronger language, but I have to be careful for some of the platforms I'm going to put this video on. And it's going to be the same with the euthanasia bill, or the terminally ill adults end of life bill, as it's called in England and Wales here. they say, the people that are promoting it say that in the first year there'll be about 500 people, plus or minus 200. They can't give exact figures, but that's what they estimate. 500 people a year in the first year, rising to 3,000 a year in year 10, and who knows how much it will go on after then. So they're already saying that the number of people that will be taking up this, I don't want to say opportunity, the sort of legal allowance to have a, to be killed by the NHS. Essentially, that's what it is. That will increase up to, from hundreds to thousands. But of course, as we know, as we've seen with abortion, it quickly goes to hundreds of thousands. And that is the worry, that that's what will happen here. People are compassionate. It's been sold to people by saying that there are some people who are in extreme pain. In the end, they're terminally ill. They've only got months to live. So therefore, they should have the right to die. I don't agree with that, but I understand that people have compassion in that circumstance. But look, this is going to quickly increase, as we've seen in Canada, as we've seen in the Netherlands, as we've seen in Belgium. In Canada, they're offering assisted dying to people who just have mild depression, or maybe are homeless or are unemployed. And you can see where this is going, and some of the thinking behind this is to just bump off people who some people in the financial industry think are a financial burden on society. So they don't see people as human beings with infinite value and made in the image of God. They see people as either making them money or not making them money, especially people in finance who actually think like this and say, well, there's a lot of pensioners around today, more than we expected. They're taking money out of their pensions that they paid into all of their lives. We don't want to pay them their pensions, so let's find a way of bumping them off. And this is the legislation to do that. So it's not just for people who I understand we can have compassion on, but it's to bump off a lot more people than we're initially being told. And that's how things will develop over the next 20 years or so if this comes in as legislation. What we need to be doing, and what we should be doing, is increasing palliative care and making sure palliative care is properly funded and is of a high quality. But palliative care in the UK is in a dire state. And what this is going to do actually is divert more resources from palliative care into terminating people's lives, because what's written in the bill also is that doctors or medical professionals in the NHS will be compelled by law to offer ending the life of a terminally ill patient if they come before them as a patient, even if you do not consider that to be ethically a good thing, which I don't. If you work as a doctor, the law says you're going to have to offer that to patients anyway. And I think a lot of good doctors who have proper ethics may leave because they don't want to actually be part of a system that is offering to bump people off when they shouldn't be. So there is a letter, a good letter that's on the website of our friends at Right to Life, and I'll put a link to that. And that's a nice one because you can put in your postcode and actually will give you a different letter to MPs, depending on whether they voted against euthanasia back in the second reading or they voted for it and you're trying to change their mind. So you've got two different letters there. One to thank people for voting against it and asking them to do the same thing again on the 16th of May. Another letter for MPs who voted for it, but hopefully a lot of them are considering changing their minds. And I know a lot of them are, because the people pushing the bill through are very nervous. They're not certain they're going to get it through, because there are more than 24 MPs that are considering changing their minds, and if they do, this bill will fall. So please, if you can, do look into that that website. I'll put the link there, and you've got a portal where you can put your postcode in, and it will give you the appropriate letter to send to your MP, depending on which way they voted last time, in order to try to get the maximum number of MPs to vote against this bill, to vote it down. So that will stop it, it will fall, and it won't be able to come back in this parliament. And then hopefully next parliament will have some far better people who are not going to even consider pushing this kind of thing through, because it's wrong. Now, also this week, actually today, I'm a little bit late talking about this today, because it's a little bit late to do too much about it, apart from write a letter online to your MSP if you can. Up in Scotland, there is another bill. Interesting, there's two bills doing the same thing, one going through England and Wales, and one going through Scotland as well at the same time. So in Scotland, we have here the Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Scotland bill, which is pretty much the same as the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life bill in England and Wales. An act of the Scottish Parliament to provide for the lawful provision to terminally ill adults of assistance to voluntarily end their own lives, and for connected purposes. So the same concerns people have about England and Wales are obviously big concerns here. It's not just going to be limited to terminally ill adults. As time goes on, the remit will be expanded. The definition of who can be killed by this bill will expand in time. In England and Wales, you've got the ability for the Secretary of State for Health to make new conditions under secondary legislation, which will just be waved through with an aye or a nay in Parliament in a couple of seconds, rather than having to have lots of debate about it. You've got the same issues there in Scotland, so it's exactly the same thing that they want to do there. The person that introduced it in Scotland is a Lib Dem called Liam MacArthur, and charities in Scotland are already concerned about the effects it will have on pensioners and victims of domestic abuse, who feel they've got no other alternative but than to end their lives, when they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be in the situation where they are afraid to carry on living because life is made worthless, and then by certain mechanisms, and then they're offered to end their lives. This is absolutely abhorrent, and it shouldn't be happening anywhere, let alone England, Wales, and Scotland. I don't know if there's anything in Northern Ireland at the moment, but I'm sure someone will be trying to introduce that there as well in the not too near distant future, because these things all seem to happen in lockstep with each other, and there are other countries around Europe where similar legislation is being proposed at this time as well. In Scotland, however, there is hope, because a lot of big names in the Scottish Parliament have said they're going to come, and they've come out against it and say they're not going to vote for it. Kate Forbes, of course, I think she's the deputy leader of the SNP. Now, I don't agree with the SNP on almost everything that they stand for, but she's a Christian, and on this, she's done the right thing. She's come out against the assisted, whatever it's called, assisting dying for terminally ill adults bill. John Swinney, the leader of the SNP, has also come out against it. He's the First Minister of Scotland. Big names that I deplore on some things that they've done and said. But Anna Sarwar, Humza Yousaf, they're dreadful on immigration and diversity and all that stuff. But on this, on euthanasia, they've said that they're going to oppose it. So good for them on this particular issue, although I would disagree with them on most other things. And also Nicola Sturgeon, surprisingly, who's usually terrible on everything, she's also said she's going to oppose this euthanasia bill. So I think this is coming for its first vote today actually, the 13th of May, which is a Tuesday. I'm making this video today. So later today, we're actually going to see whether it passes through the first reading in the Scottish Parliament. But let's hope it falls there as well today. And it also will fall in England and Wales on Friday. And that will be not just a good result, but we need to make sure that this doesn't become legislation in either England and Wales or Scotland. The only, proviso I can say, if that's the right word, is that if it does pass in England and Wales, and I hope it doesn't, it's not going to come into force of law until October 2029. So with all of the debate and opposition to this bill already, they've pushed back the date by 2 years of when it's going to come into force. So they did initially say, well, we want this to start in 2027. But because of all the opposition, and there's been a lot of great opposition to this bill from a lot of people, the Heritage Party, obviously, in politics and other lobbying groups have done a really good job in opposing this. Our friends in UK Medical Freedom Alliance and Right to Life being a couple of them. It won't start until 2029. So even if it does go through today in England and Wales, it then has to go through the Lords. They might stop it and block it and send it back to the Commons again. Who knows? But even if it does pass through Parliament, it's not going to come into force of law until 2029. And there'll be an election before then. So by then, there will be another chance to stop it in England and Wales, with us having an election. And obviously, by that time, in 4 years, the Heritage Party will have grown a lot and will be standing a lot more candidates for Parliament in the next general election. So that's just, a sort of proviso there to say, even if it does go through today, that's not the end of the matter. Sorry, not today, this week on Friday. It's not the end of the matter, but we do want to stop it this week. In England and Wales on Friday, and obviously in Scotland today on Tuesday as well. So please do write to your MP. I'll put the link to where you can put your postcode in and get the letter from Right to Life to send to your MP by Friday to ask them to vote against this bill in the third reading. And let's try to get that stopped, because this should not even be considered as something that should come into law in a civilized country. Thanks for listening, everyone, and God bless you all.